Hi, my name is Manu Saluja. I'm an instructor at the New York Academy of Art. This video was made for Certificate of Fine Art students to aid them in the completion of their first homework assignment, which is to create a value scale. So what I have here is a 11 by 14 inch canvas panel, which I've taken a pencil and a ruler, and the first step is to create a row uh, on the horizontal line of the 14-inch side of the panel. So what I'm basically doing is measuring off two lines in pencil. I know it's hard to see, that are 1.25 inches, creating a row on top that's 1.25 inches. Then I'm measuring a 1/2 inch below that to create a second 1.25 inch row. And in a moment you'll see a closer picture, better view of this. So then, once I have those two rows, the next thing that I'm going to do is measure vertically, which I'm doing now, to create 1.25 inch boxes. And the goal is to end up with 11 boxes, and they're going to be labeled in number from the number 10 on the left, counting down to the number 0 on the right. So now what I'm doing is marking off the 1.25 inches vertically, and then I'm going to take the ruler and create those vertical lines so that we end up with the 11 boxes in the two rows. And essentially the value scale is, the use of the value scale is to be able to train your eye to see value from the lightest possible value to the darkest. So box number 10, once we label all these boxes, the number 10 is going to be on the top on the left side, and 0, we're going to count all the way to 0 going left to right until 0 marks the last box. And the idea for this project, you can see here the two rows that were created, better view, with the numbers from 10 to 0. So now what we're going to do is take a white pigment, titanium white. White is always going to be your lightest possible value, and it's going to be in box number 10. 0, made with ivory black, is going to be your darkest possible oil pigment, placed in the box labeled 0. And what we have now is the two extremes that are available to all oil painters, from the lightest possibility to the darkest. And then the project, the assignment, is to then, with a mixture of white and black, mix together a middle value, which would be value 5. And what you can do is take a palette knife and check the value that's on the palette knife and compare it to the value scale that was provided to you, until you feel that you can squint your eyes and see that the value is matching the existing scale. And then you paint. Once you feel pretty confident that you have a value 5, you paint it into the box labeled 5. And this essentially gives you middle value. It is meant to be the middle value between your lightest and darkest possibilities. So now, once we have the middle value set up, and by the way, you can start with any value, but the idea behind this is to then begin to mix up your lighter values. They're going to be different gradations of light from value 9, 8, 7, and 6. So right now, what I'm doing is mixing out value number 6, and what I did was just take whatever was left over of the value 5 pile, and I added titanium white until I felt confident again that I had reached value 6 by comparing it on the palette knife to the scale. And then once I feel I have it about right, taking your brush, I'm not really adding any too much medium, a little bit of linseed oil maybe if you feel it stiff, and then just very gently with the brush placing it in the box number 6 and putting it right up against value 5. And the goal of this scale, as I start to keep mixing things out, is to get to the point where each of these values are an equal jump. So in other words, the difference from value 10 to value 9 is the same difference as value 9 to value 8. I've added more titanium white and actually ended up with a pile that's a little bit lighter, about a value 8 from comparing it to the scale. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the value 8 box, which is okay. You know, you just want to keep comparing what your mixture on your palette to the scale that was provided to you, and do your best to match the values and place them in the box. So once I'm finished with value number 8, I'm moving on to number 9, which gets placed in box 9. And then I'm going to jump back to value 7 by having added a little bit more ivory black till I feel that I've completed now values 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and 5. When it comes to mixing the darker values, we're going to have a greater quantity of ivory black and less white. And so the amount of ivory black that we're going to be using is going to increase as you move from values 4, 3, 2, and 1 all the way down to 0. So with value 4, that's going to be the one that I put down next, and then working my way towards the darker values. So now, as I keep comparing the values as I'm working my way from value 4 to 1, I keep comparing it to the scale, and I continually add ivory black to make the values darker. White and black, and again, just to repeat this because it's very critical to understand that 0 is always ivory black, and value 10 is always titanium white. And then the mixtures are created in between to create these equidistant jumps in value. Ivory black and titanium white tend to have a very cool tone to them in temperature. So they can essentially be used in a substitute of blue when it comes to painting flesh tones initially. And that is why this first scale that we're doing is called the cool scale, named after the temperature. So the second row is then called the warm scale. And what I'm doing now is putting raw umber pigment. I know in the video it looks very close to ivory black, but it's actually raw umber. And so right now in box number 1, I'm just placing pure raw umber oil paint. Color essentially exists between values 9 and 1, because remember that 0 is always ivory black and 10 is always titanium white. So as I mix together raw umber and white to create value 5 of the warm scale using raw umber and titanium white, I'm going to place it in box number 5 once I check its value. So I'm going to use the same scale that was provided, the existing scale, to check the value of the warm scale as well. And the reason for that is because the goal of this project is to try to train your eye to recognize values even when the color shifts and the color starts to change in subsequent scales that we'll be creating in color. So even though the raw umber and white mixture looks warmer than the scale that I'm using to judge the value, that's okay. The goal is to be able to see value from pigment to pigment. So the last step in this warm scale that I'm going to provide as a demo is just putting on titanium white in box number 10. And then I'm going to leave it there because the rest of the assignment is to create values, all of the values using raw umber and white till that warm scale is complete. As a final step, once the warm scale is complete, you could place ivory black in the 0 value box. I hope this demo was helpful in having you complete your first homework project, and I look forward to seeing you all in class.